And I can't tell you how much I read, but it was more than Matthew, more than Mark, and almost certainly I was into John's Gospel, because I was quite a fast reader. And I read things that I simply
baffled you?
well, I couldn't believe how anybody could believe in it.
Yeah.
I really couldn't. And I had the deepest respect for my father who'd gone on, and I know he was a believer. But I couldn't believe it. And I got to the bit where Jesus is walking on the water, and I have to be honest with you, I scoffed. And I can remember thinking in my heart, oh, they've got him walking on the water now, what's coming next? So that's where I started.
But we've all been there.
That's where I started. And I realized that particularly living in the United States, that the entire culture seemed to be based upon Christianity, church going and what have you, even though I didn't go any other places. That I set myself a challenge, because I liked mental challenges. I liked to have to figure something out. I reckoned that I could find the flaw in Christianity, and it must be in the book, because this is what people were believing. So I started to read this book, quite convinced that I would find the flaw. Well, I did find the flaw. I did. I found a flaw, which is where Jesus says that if you ask me to come in, I will come in and sup with you. And I said, well, I've got you. Because if I ask you to come in, behold, I stand at the door and knock. And if you don't come in, that makes you a liar. And that is my case proven. And that's where I started. And it was a 2-year process. And during that 2 years, for most of that period, I knew he was the truth. I knew it was true.
Can I ask, did you have any moments of, I don't know why I'm going to say this, but like mental problems or depression when you were seeking this?
No.
You didn't? It was straight in, there was no kind of repression on you, or darkness or anything like that?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
But not in this.
But I was very sincere. No, I didn't. No.
Can you understand why I'm asking the question?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah.
Because after becoming a believer, I have experienced depression, and I know it's demonic.
Yeah.
So I do relate to people who,
because it's
suffer from this.
It's our battle, which is our battle as humans, but with Christ living in us, we have a battle. We're called to battle against the demonic, and so the battle is in the spiritual heavenlies, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not a kind of physical battle which man goes to war and kills X, although the next war may well be even, let's just say, written in prophecy that many people will be killed.
I think most of what depresses us is when we don't want to give it all to him. And then that we want to hold on to something. We want to hold on to a private sin, or and then we get very down. We get very, very sad. Oh, wretched man that I am, kind of thing. When will I get through with this? That is the difficult thing. That as far as the demonic realm, I'm aware that the Lord Jesus Christ, He's ruling, and
absolutely. There's no glory. I'm not putting any glory in this direction to that area at all. But it is.
We're the ones that give him the right, the enemy, the right to come in, basically by silly believing and hanging on to his rubbish.
True.
Yeah,
True.
yeah.
So we've done the early years. We've done the middle sort of years. What happened then? You've asked this
I had
huge question.
I had one of the most powerful lessons,
Mhm.
and it went right over the top of my head. I didn't get it for some time. And we were talking earlier, and I mentioned it, this thing about faith and substance.
Mm.
Now, for most of that 2-year period, because I was reading the words of Jesus Christ every single day for
Mhm.
hours,
Mm.
he seemed to be talking to me. This is what was so extraordinary. He knew me. He was speaking to me. And I used to shake my head and think, it can't be. This is a book. What do you know?
Mhm.
But in the end I said, okay, I'll go along with this. He is speaking to me. And so I started to listen to that voice and respond to that voice coming through the words of Jesus Christ. And I wanted to get saved because I knew there was such a thing as having an inner witness. I knew, I don't know how I knew, but I knew that to get born again,
Mhm.
to get saved, I would have the inner witness
Mhm.
that I am secure. And I
Sure.
wanted that security.
You wanted to be saved completely from the stuff.
I did.
Yeah.
I wanted that inner witness.
Mm.
And I got on my knees, I did everything. I did it on my knees, I did it on my feet, I did it sitting down. Nothing seemed to work.
Mm.
And I said, Lord, come into my life, I'm asking for forgiveness of my sins. And I was thinking, now what are my sins? And I think, no, I've done this, I've done that. And you know, the list I came up with was not that enormously long. But that, I'll mention that in a moment.
Sure.
I mean, yes, like everybody, I wasn't 100% honest, I wasn't 100% moral, I wasn't, you know what I'm saying. But I didn't go around murdering people or even wanting to. Well, I couldn't get this inner witness of salvation. And I'd been at it for months.
Mm.
And then one night, there was a very poor reception in my area of Trinity Broadcasting Network. They had started to beam out of Santa Ana, California.
Okay.
And I was picking up this snowy picture
Mhm.
on this funny little TV I had. And it was Get Saved night. And they were putting a telephone number at the bottom. Ring up the telephone number and someone will pray with you.
Mm.
Well, I thought, I've done just about everything else. You know, give it a go. So I rang up the Trinity Broad TBN,
Mm.
and this lady came on the other end, and she led me through the sinner's prayer.
Mm.
And that was late at night. I went to bed, I went to sleep.
Mm.
Got up the next morning, I'm on the way out of the apartment, going to work.
Mm.
And I suddenly remembered the night before. I checked my spirit. Did I have the witness? No, I had nothing at all. And I remember saying, and I was a little rude, I remember saying to the Lord, well, I've done absolutely everything. I've done my bit completely.
Mm.
Now you...
It's your turn.
Exactly. Now you get on and do your bit.
Yeah.
And I went out the door and I went to work. I must have been busy.
Mm.
Always lots of things to do with a little company.
Mm.
I think it would be maybe 2 or 3 days later I got back in the evening. And by the way, when I left the house and I said, you get on and do your bit, I really meant it. I just gave it to him.
Mm. Mm.
2 or 3 days later I checked and I had the inner witness. That was the most important lesson.
Mm.
And it went right over my head. And even today I'm learning it. When you ask and you know that you've asked, we have to remember when you have asked him for something, don't keep asking.
Mm.
That's unbelief. Leave it with him.
Could you say once and once only? You know, you leave it with him once and once only. People pray and pray and pray. I know that it sounds right to do that, but if you've spoken to your Maker, I have to believe that he's heard me the first time.
I believe you're correct, but I think as human beings, what I do is sometimes I remind him that I did pray.
Yeah. It's just that
And I do it that way. But I've been many times
Mm-hmm.
that one has caught me, and I've gone and.
So where we are here then, what happens in that situation to make it aware to be a witness, as you say, that there is something different now, there is something that you're aware of, you're attuned to?
I had the most terrific, I had this wonderful inner knowing, and I also had an incredible joy. And if I said to you my joy was just spiritual, I'm not sure I can say that completely as the truth. But I knew I had eternal life. That was the main joy. I was young, I was 34 years of age. I was relatively wealthy, I was healthy, I had my own business. I'm living in one of the most beautiful places on earth. I used to have breakfast every morning under a palm tree.
You're making me envious.
And I couldn't, frankly, I couldn't believe, I couldn't believe how good it was.
So what went wrong?
Well, what went wrong, I was reading my Bible, and this is just a few weeks afterwards. I'm reading my Bible, and I was in John's Gospel, and I'm reading John 14, verse 21, and the voice, the way I knew how he spoke to me, and he said to me from this verse, through this verse, I'm going to disclose myself to you. And in fact, if I read this to you, you'll see I've taken it slightly out of context, but not that much. I take my specs off to read.
I mean, what we're doing here, I mean, testimony is always a passion for many people, I think, once you start to hear one testimony, but this is not the church kind of setting. This is just a house. We're talking. We're talking openly, and I know in a minute there's other elements of your testimony of miracles that, you know, Jesus intervened directly in your life. And so reading this word to you, what happened? Because this is obviously a key thing.
Well, and I've got to be careful not to make it sound as if this is the only way that God will speak to anybody. But it was the way I got used to hearing his voice. It's like there's a signature on it. And if you read a Len Dayton novel, there isn't. It's just words, clever words. But this seems to have a signature. It's a living, and you have to sense that. If you try reading with your mind, you miss it. But if you are just reading it and allowing, you're reading it because you want him to speak to you. It's his word. And this is what the